Do you have any advice for me to find really rich people in Jackson?
Look for really, really nice houses.
This is Jackson Hole, Wyoming, the last of the Old West, and also the wealthiest county per capita in America.
Everybody wants that shot, that view of the Tetons, and it's open to the highest bidder.
Here, the billionaires can be hard to pick out in a crowd.
Do you think you've met any while you're here?
Probably. I don't know.
They kind of blend in?
Yeah, I would guess so.
But even if you can't always see them, the impact of their wealth is impossible to ignore. That's because Jackson Hole isn't just the richest place in the country, it's also the most unequal.
Teton County is just for rich people now.
How bad is that housing crisis right now?
It may be one of the worst in the country.
For your average person outside of Jackson, this sounds bonkers.
So I spent a week here.
Here we go.
Looking for billionaires.
Are you a billionaire? Are you a billionaire?
Trying to blend in. To understand how this small mountain town became the wealthiest in the country. What that's meant for the people who keep it running. And what, if anything, it means for the rest of the country.
All the people that have all the power, they're coming here to just get even more.
Our story doesn't start in Jackson Hole. It starts here, on the other side of the mountains, in Idaho.
These are the people who make that town run. He's been involved in a lot of those hotels and a lot of that construction, and now he's living in Driggs.
Diana and Fernando moved from Mexico to Jackson Hole in 2002, where they raised their son Brandon for 14 years. Fernando found work in construction, building mansions for the rich, while Diana was a housekeeper and a nanny.
We are very lucky to live in this place because it's beautiful and it's very clean and there are open areas for growing family. But I think, especially right now, everything is very expensive.
In the last few years, they've been priced out of Jackson, first to Victor, Idaho, then to Driggs.
Next year, probably we move to Titonia. Next time, until they kick us out.
But their story isn't unique. Almost half of the people who work in Jackson are forced to commute from outside of Teton County.
So we're based out of Rigby, Idaho, but we drive back and forth every day for work.
How long's the drive?
About an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes.
One way?
Mm-hmm.
Prices in Jackson are so high that our film crew had to stay in a log cabin in Victor, forced to take the daily commute with the rest of the workforce over an 8,000-foot mountain pass. For workers who make this commute year-round, things can get pretty dicey.
A landslide wiped out a crucial state highway.
Officials calling it a catastrophic failure.
The first time I drove to Jackson, there was a terrible snowing. I was very scared, and I can see anything.
But on a clear day, when you reach the top, this is your view. Jackson Hole, with its towering Tetons and its sprawling mansions. Here, the top 1% make an average of $35 million, 221 times more than the 99%. So, how did that happen? Why did this valley, of all places, attract so much wealth?
There's always been wealthy people, but they very much wanted to be part of the culture that existed here.
Nikki Gill is a fifth-generation rancher in Jackson Hole.
When my dad grew up, Jackson was predominantly a ranching community. There were 80-something ranches. My great-grandfather, Robert Bruce Porter, started the Jackson Hole Hereford Ranch in 1928.
But while Nikki's family was building a working cattle ranch, the wealthiest family in the country was quietly pursuing their own plans for the valley. The Rockefellers had built the most powerful monopoly in the US, making them the world's first billionaires, and also earning them a reputation as ruthless robber barons. So they got to work repairing that reputation, and Jackson Hole became one of their most ambitious projects. They started quietly buying up land in and around the valley, and eventually donated more than 35,000 acres to the federal government, resulting in the creation of Grand Teton National Park. But that didn't just preserve this area's pristine nature in amber. It also made Jackson Hole an extremely desirable destination for the super rich.
Jackson Hole is a really comfortable place to live. It does help if you have a lot of money.
By the late 60s, Jackson had a world-class ski resort, attracting everyone from ski bums to billionaires. Then, in the 80s and 90s, America got a whole lot richer at the top. And if you had a fortune to protect, Wyoming was hard to beat. No income tax, no wealth tax, no worries.
Was there a time when you remember it starting to change?
I want to say early 2000s is probably when we saw some of the biggest changes.
More hotels, more rich people moving in.
Count the number of private jets at the airport kind of tells the story too.
In just a few decades, the per capita income of Teton County went from a little higher than average to the highest in the nation. Higher than Manhattan or Miami. But if this place has so much wealth, where are all the rich people?
Where can I find me a billionaire around these parts? We came out here trying to find a super rich person like a billionaire. Do you see them in town?
I don't know that I'd know the difference between him or somebody else, you know?
Unlike Miami or Manhattan, Jackson Hole isn't the kind of place where wealth puts on a show. Here, the super rich blend in, wearing Wranglers and cowboy hats.
Are you a billionaire?
No.
Are you a billionaire?
Right? No, I'm not a billionaire for sure. No.
You're not?
No, I'm not. No.
You're sure?
Yeah, I'm for sure.
Are you a billionaire?
Not a billionaire.
Damn.
There's another reason the wealthiest residents may be hard to find. They don't actually live here. At least not for most of the year.
They just buy the house, but they just stay for vacations, for winter or summer.
Just long enough to reap the tax benefits.
Are you a billionaire? Okay.
But even if you can't always see them, the impact of their wealth is hard to miss.
We got a house for like $800,000, and now the house is over $3 million.
Jessica Chambers moved to Jackson in 2010, just as property values were starting to take off.
Every year it gets worse by a larger magnitude than the year before.
In these years, Jackson increased the rents very.
As prices rose, investors saw a chance to cash in, buying rental properties, remodeling them, and selling them to customers with deeper pockets. But that meant evicting longtime tenants, like Diana and Fernando.
They sold to the rich person. I expect they increase the rent, but I never expect they kick out everybody.
By 2020, the housing crisis hit an inflection point.
What we might have seen in 15 years happened in 2. When everybody was homebound and realized they could work virtually or just wanted to get out of the city, they had cash. They came in and just paid cash for homes.
This neighborhood cost a pretty penny. Each one of these houses, maybe $10, $20 million.
1 bedroom, I think it's running $3,000 to $5,000.
For your average person outside of Jackson, this sounds bonkers.
It's why in Jackson, there's a saying, either you own a few homes or you work a few jobs.
I was at a doctor's appointment yesterday talking to my nurse, and she said she has 3 jobs. And I mean, that's pretty crazy. You know, nurses make a lot of money, and for her to say that kind of blew my mind.
Brandon is able to live in town, for now, by working 2 jobs. And because he lives in employee housing, a rare luxury in Jackson Hole.
They're supposed to build affordable houses for employees, but isn't it? They are very expensive.
And the problem keeps getting worse. The percentage of workers forced to commute from out of town has gone up year over year.
With the town growing, there's just nobody to work these jobs because there's nowhere for people to live.
So why is it so hard to build affordable housing in Jackson Hole? Well, for starters, thanks to the Rockefellers' generous gift, 97% of the land is public, meaning it can't be developed. On top of that, you have another 1.5% of the pie going to something called conservation easements.
Land conservation easements. Very, very wealthy people purchase homes that are on large lots, and they could develop like a $10 million home on this property. Well, they say like, we're not gonna do that. We'll just build a $2 million home. And then we get a tax write-off for all of the stuff that we could have built, but we didn't. And then that land gets locked away from ever being developed.
Which leaves less than 1.5% of land available for development. But even on that remaining slice of land, trying to build affordable housing is an uphill battle.
We've been in a housing crisis for decades, and you would think in a crisis we would move quickly to solve the problem, and I don't think we've done a great job of that.
In 2020, Nikki's family introduced Northern South Park, a plan to convert over 200 acres of their ranch land into a mixture of market-rate homes and dense affordable housing. If it went through as planned, Northern South Park would be the largest housing project in Teton County history. But if you go to Northern South Park right now, you won't find much.
We're 6 years into that project, and we're still years out from a home being constructed within that development.
We actually have some market housing finally happening, but on this other side where the more dense housing is going to take place, it's still greenfield.
Greg Epstein was on Teton County Commission when Northern South Park was first proposed. And he was on the inside as the process got slowed down again and again.
People in Teton County have been very apprehensive to develop too quickly, or at all for that matter.
It turns out this conversation isn't new. For 50 years, the community has repeatedly considered and rejected any attempt to build housing at Northern South Park. So, what happened here?
Why, during a housing crisis, are we taking 6+ years to approve a development where 70% of the homes will be deed restricted for our local workforce?
It's really hard to say. I'm comfortable saying it. We have to look at limits to growth. And we need to say we're only going to grow so much and we will just be a smaller community.
Luther Probst is also a Teton County commissioner. He was one of the first and most vocal critics of the project.
I oppose Northern South Park. I don't see how it's going to work. We cannot build our way out of this crisis despite what some of the rah-rah developer types like to say.
This desire to limit growth in Jackson Hole isn't new. You can find it in community planning workshops from the 90s, where residents express concern about rapid growth threatening small-town values and the loss of scenic beauty and wildlife. And you can find it in this document from 1994, which has shaped housing in the valley ever since.
The comprehensive plan is a guiding document for future development in the valley.
The first part of the comp plan is preserve and protect the area's ecosystem. That is like right there, number one. That's like what everybody goes back to.
Prior to 1994, all of the open land in the county was zoned 1 house per 3 acres. And that changed in 1994 to 1 house per 35. And that's a big change. The lack of supply has driven property values very high.
Jackson Hole has a long history of conserving nature. But there's another name for these kinds of policies.
What do we call it? NIMBYism? Okay. Not in my backyard.
But in this case, the backyard is the Grand Tetons.
You want to protect your view. You don't want apartment buildings.
And the NIMBYs are worth, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Some of those people have the luxury of time. A lot of the people who this project would benefit don't have the luxury of time.
There's no end. There's no light at the end of the tunnel, I think, in this problem.
At what point does housing our community become the priority?
But to understand what this community chooses to prioritize, it helps to follow the money. That's because Jackson Hole isn't just known for its wealth, it's also known for its generosity.
We have this nonprofit world here. Over 200 nonprofits for this community.
But not all nonprofits are funded equally.
Of those nonprofits, there's like 4 that get funding from the lion's share.
Here, there's no shortage of donations for conservation and the arts.
If you were to put it on a map, you would have these circles of, this is the Land Trust, and then Wildlife Museum, Center for the Arts. And then over here is the One Health and Human Service Organization, and then everything else is like dots.
We have the richest county in the country, and we have 70-some homeless families. Like, that's shame on us.
Sarah Cavallaro runs Teton Youth and Family Services. In the last few years, she's seen another side of Jackson's housing crisis.
It's mom and dad are getting divorced. We don't have a house. We can't pay for food. We've got 7 jobs going on, so nobody's watching the kids.
But with recent funding cuts from the state, she struggled to make up the difference with philanthropy.
The priorities are completely fucking skewed. Like, they don't make any sense.
And even though affordable housing does occasionally get funded by wealthy donors,
A very generous donor donated somewhere around $20 million to lower the price of housing in a project downtown.
it hasn't happened at a scale that comes anywhere close to meeting the need.
There is a small donor pool for people that contribute to housing. That's just the way it is.
It's another reason why the Northern South Park project is anything but guaranteed.
That project will require 2 of our nonprofit housing providers to raise somewhere between $250 million and $400 million. I will believe that when I see it.
It raises an obvious question. Why can't the wealthiest community in the country find the money to provide housing for everyone?
All these people are doing these things in the name of conservation that ultimately benefit them.
The arts are definitely always getting funded. Go downtown and there's 10 galleries. You can't house a person in an art gallery.
They're not impacted by the lack of affordable housing. Maybe they lose their favorite server at the Thai restaurant they love going to. It's like the hell with everybody else. I got mine. I'm not worried.
After spending a week in the richest county in America, I couldn't find a single billionaire who would talk to me.
So are you talking to any of the wealthy people?
They don't want to talk to us.
No one wants to talk to us.
I get it.
Yeah, we're asking hard
You're not
questions,
surprised, are you?
Yeah, no.
But what I did find was a breathtaking landscape in a community that's been completely transformed by wealth from the moment the first billionaires ever showed up.
The father of fossil fuels came here to buy land to protect nature. That's been a dynamic that's played out ever since then.
The mindset that people had when they moved here and the drive to preserve it and not allow anything else to happen is what made the biggest change.
Those same people flying in here on private jets, but then they come here and they protect the environment as a way to give back.
It's easy to come here and enjoy and fall in love with it, but it's so hard on the locals, on the people who have been here, who make the wheels turn.
Yeah.
It's hard.
When the owners kick us out, one lady say, "Hey, I have an idea. Why we don't go inside to the rich people empty houses and we live in there? They don't use it." And say, "And we go to the jail, lady."
But the situation in Jackson Hole isn't inevitable. It's not the result of some fundamental law of nature. It's a result of policy choices about how to carve up land, how much housing to build, and who should have to pay for it.
The devil's in the details here, the policy details. The policies that are put in place support a particular kind of person. That's what we're seeing everywhere. And it's hard to undo that without people power.
If you were king or queen for the day and you could snap your fingers and fix this, what would you do?
I will doing more houses for the people. If the rich people can help to give more money to building more houses, real affordable houses, because they are kicking out all workers from Jackson. And I don't want to move from here because it's a wonderful place. It's a very, very beautiful community.
That's what our country is now, period. And like, this is just the most extreme version of it playing out. I guess that's what makes Teton County so special. It's a lot of the same, but like, it's very extreme.
Howdy, cowpokes. Did you like that story? Go ahead and subscribe to our channel. And if you got more ideas for stories, get on up down to the comments section or find our company email. It's on the internet. Okay, until next time.